In this video, I'm going to talk about the two basic ways people get at this question of why do some firms outperform others. The first is the industrial, organizational, or IO economic view, which is championed by Michael Porter, where he does most of his writing. And in this idea, the external environment is the key. In other words, the world tells you what is the realm of the possible. And it's all about seeing what the world offers you as possible and then figuring out from that possible world then how you can make the most money. So the external environment analysis is key. But one thing that Porter doesn't focus on quite so much is this idea of individual firm differences. Particularly, what the IO view says is it's very easy for firms to copy what the other is doing, and/or it's very easy for them to take to imitate their resources. And so what they say is what tends to happen is industries have fairly similar performances. So I pulled a very recent stock trace, and this is the airline industry. I can't see my screen very well, so I'm going to kind of describe it. You may want to pause this and take a look at the screens individually, but the marker on the bottom is actually the S&P 500, and you can see that all of the airlines, and that's Delta, United Continental, Southwest, and JetBlue are the four traces represented. They all well outperform the S&P 500 in this 5-year picture, and you can also see they tended to move fairly consistently with one another. And so this would be the IO mindset that you get into you had an airline, the airlines were benefiting from certain structural advantages, and regardless of what strategy you chose, you did fairly well. Particularly if you pull the United Continental off of there, which is struggling after a merger, then the performances do in fact look pretty similar. Although you can also notice there are still some pretty big individual differences between the companies. Now contrast that with the resource-based view. And it's not that these two disagree with each other, it's that they put their focus in different places. And they disagree with the IO view because they say that resources are not perfectly mobile, which means firms can and do generate enduring differences that are not easily imitated. And so because of that, they develop competencies based on their resources, and that is the basis of why they are able to outperform their competitive firms. So let me illustrate that one for you with a stock trace. The bottom line is a stock that I owned during much of this period, I'm sad to say, and that's Procter & Gamble. So Procter & Gamble is considered, the company, but in fact they've been outperforming. The top line there is the S&P 500, so you can see that this entire sector has underperformed the S&P 500, but the second highest stock trace, the one in kind of the pinkish, is Colgate-Palmolive, which you would consider to be the closest US-based competitor to Procter & Gamble, and you can see they've tremendously outperformed Procter & Gamble over this period. The one in the middle is Unilever, which is very similar to Procter & Gamble, a European company. And again, you can see it's significantly outperformed Procter & Gamble. This would be the resource-based view that says, you know what? Even within the same industry, companies can generate very different results. So, which is best? Anytime I ask a question like that, you're going to know probably it's a trick question. And the answer is they're both very informative. I believe that industries are very important, and I also believe that resources are not perfectly mobile. So I think you have to pay attention to both of them. And in fact, when you read for the next class, the 2006 update of Porter's Five Forces, an article I'm going to have you read, and I'll talk about that in the next series of videos. What he's done is he's pulled in a lot of resource-based view speak and kind of pulled off parts of it. So it's not that they disagree with one another, it just puts focuses in slightly different areas. Vision and mission statement. The textbook does a nice job of talking about the hierarchy of commands. This is some information I put on the chart about what you're looking for, but then I have a question for you. Do you really think vision and mission statements matter in the companies where you work? And how many of you actually even know your vision and mission statement? This is fun to do in a classroom full of people because very few people will raise their hand and say, yeah, I do know it. And so then that asks the question, does it even matter? And my answer is sometimes yes, often no. The reason I say often no, if I go into any McDonald's and ask the person that's taking my order, do you know the mission and vision of McDonald's? I don't really think it matters. They're relying on the local leadership that they see. Does that store have a good culture? Do they have a very positive workforce? Do they have strong leadership? If the answer to that's yes, or even no, that's what's going to drive performance of that individual franchisee. It's not writ large the basic McDonald's big picture, but for the franchise owner, maybe it is important, or frankly, maybe not. Let me give you some caveats of where I do think where vision and mission statements matter and matter a lot. One is at founding, because this is when you're imprinting the culture with the DNA. The second is when you're in a turnaround situation. And almost always when you're in a turnaround situation, that suggests you need major change. And so that's kind of the third one, is when you're trying to change, laying things out with a clear new mission and vision statement, I think is very helpful. But if things are relatively static, I'm not sure that all those little 3x5 cards, or they're not that big, but all those little cards the companies pass out that have the vision and the mission on them, they're laminated, that everybody's supposed to carry around in their wallet. I just don't think they matter very much. And let me illustrate this and pick on a company that has been in the midst of a turnaround for now quite some time is Yahoo. Ms. Marissa Mayer was stolen away from Google to take over Yahoo about 3 years ago, and by a lot of reports is doing a pretty good job. But what I'm showing you on this chart is what was the vision. They don't label as such. I just go to the investor relations page and pick off the thing that looks the most like a vision and mission statement. What did it look like just before she took over as a CEO? You can read that, and then you can see the very month that she took over as a CEO, how it was recast. And I've kind of underlined some of the things that are the same, key points that are the same or are different. And then down below is the January 2013 one. And this is after she's been at the company for several months, which, if you follow the theory, this is when she should really be imprinting her new vision for the company. And you can see she did, in fact, change the front line. But beyond that, it gets to be somewhat similar. And then finally, I just went to their latest annual reports. This was published in probably in the spring of 2015, and pulled up again what I could best define as it. And you can see the front end of it is unchanged. Not that it's wrong that it's not changed. What I've underlined is a little bit different. The first underline where it talks about whatever devices people on, I think are really a repeat from an earlier statement. And then they've actually taken the value statement for the advertisers, who is really the people, the real paying customers of Yahoo, and broken that out. So the point is, not that much different. What if Marissa Mayer had this as a vision statement instead? We are going to make Yahoo relevant again by dominating the mobile market. Couple of key things in that. And you may not like that. I'm not saying it's better than what she's done, but it's shorter. Two, it's pretty clear that what we're saying is we had a great company once upon a time that was highly relevant, and today, not so much. And it's made it clear where they really need to improve, which is on the mobile platforms, which is the heart of her strategy. But she doesn't say that in the vision and mission statement. So now I've been hard on people. The reality is, often, as Jack Welch once put it, vision statements and mission statements are written or sound like they were written by some fat-headed business professor. Ouch, that hurts. Instead of being crystal clear and something people go, yeah, I get it. Like I was suggesting for Yahoo, we are gonna become relevant again by dominating the mobile, or by becoming big in the mobile market, and probably a couple of specific ways that they're going to do that would be good. All right, one more video after this to wrap up this basic introduction to strategy. Join me.